Hello, and welcome to the Electric and Eclectic Podcast Show with Roger Atkins and some truly smart and amazingly interesting guests. Are you sitting comfortably? Then we'll begin. Episode 6.
Hello, everybody. Now, electric and eclectic could mean many, many things, but for sure it means my friend Gianfranco Bozzuto. He is the founder of a company, an extraordinary company, looking at a beautiful, a wonderfully gorgeous electric vehicle. And he's put this together from scratch. It's his grand ambition. He is the founder of the company, and we're going to find out all about his journey before all of this, but certainly what he's doing now and what's going to come next. So, Gianfranco, hello, and how are you, my friend?
Good afternoon, Roger. I'm very good now. I was traveling, and as you know, I'm commuting from beautiful South Tyrol, where my home is, to Modena, where the headquarters of Automobili Estrema are located. So it was a nice journey, very hot, but thankfully not too much traffic.
Well, you know, there hasn't been a lot of traffic anywhere for a while, has there? Let's be honest, for the reason that people know without going into that detail. But what has been happening is lots of activity in and around electric vehicles. Despite the challenges that we've all had, people like you and many others are progressing their businesses. They are succeeding despite this epic challenge of the last 15, 16, 17 months that we've all been enduring. Hopefully, we are slowly but surely emerging from that. So can I just ask you a few personal questions, sort of straight off? How have you been since this happened last, really, I suppose, February, March last year? I think we almost bumped into each other in Turin. I was over in February of last year, 2020, going to Automobile Pininfarina to look at the Battista. And I think I nearly bumped into you, didn't I? We were almost crossing over at that point.
Yes, I was in Torino as well for different reasons. The life was different back then. It's almost incredible what happened in, like you said before, in this 15, 16 months. And actually, you know, I was still preparing, at least mentally, to visit Geneva Auto Show, which is one of my, maybe the favorite show for automobile. And then, you know, what happened, that they canceled. And then our lives were just suddenly completely, you know, different. And of course, it was also affecting myself. And I had to stay at home because we were in the first lockdown, in the first hard lockdown in Italy, which was lasting almost 2 months. It wasn't easy, but you know, we had to somehow look for the, I call it the grande bellezza. You know, you can stay at home and complain and say, "Oh, I'm miserable," or you can react. And this is together with a couple of friends. This is exactly what we did. We first also tried to actually take over Formula E team. You might remember that.
Oh, yes. Yeah.
You remember that? And that was with NIO. And because NIO, it seemed that they have some troubles economically. And then while we were doing actually our progress in, you know, defining how we're going to take over the team and the rules and MOU and all these documents, and I thought I was pretty close to take it over, and suddenly I said, no, we are fine, and I guess the reason why was because they were getting fundings, so we didn't go through. So I was, you know, initially I was pretty, you know, upset because I was starting to dream about having a Formula E team, the first Italian one. And then it didn't happen. But I had put together a number of manager, engineers, technicians. And so we kept, let's say, this WhatsApp group, you know. And so I was adding a few more people. And then I started to call it the WhatsApp group, Progetto Hypercar. In Italian, Progetto is project, Hypercar. I had no idea. It was more for fun. And then one of the guys said, "Oh, maybe I can do some sketches for you, and let's see if it's going to please or not." And that started out like a game, And then in September, when finally, you have to think about that, for months we never met in person. So it was, I like you, I discovered all this technological supports, Zoom. Zoom is the one that I'm using, like you, as I see. And over Zoom, we had for the first time the chance to meet in person. And that was in Torino again, because, it's the design town for the Italian design. Like you mentioned Pininfarina, but there are a lot of brands, and there are a lot of small companies as well, small, young, very talented young people that starts companies. Thank God it's not going to stop, even if Pininfarina was sold, it's not Italian. Italdesign, it's not Italian. So major designers or designer studios are, no more in Italian hands. But I met these two young gentlemen that proposed some sketches. And I said, okay, I would like to see from your side something which is, quite traditional, and something which is like more extreme. So in Italian, extreme is estrema, okay? And then, months later, we decided to call the company Estrema, because from the two design elements that they were suggesting us, one was definitely something like a Ferragini, okay? So it was too much with elements from Ferrari and Lamborghini. And the other one was exactly what I was looking for. And it was really something different. It was an extreme design. And finally, it became also the name of the company. So it started to be really, taking shape like in September, October of last year.
Now, you mentioned a word at the beginning of that explanation. You said the word dream. And, we all have dreams. Sometimes they're pretty vivid dreams, but mostly that's all they remain. There's something in our consciousness, subconsciousness. We dream, but we don't realize that dream. What's the difference, Gianfranco, in regard to the journey you're on now? How do you go from having a dream to then putting these things all together? You've mentioned the people you've met. You mentioned the obviously inspiration of a city like Turin, but my word, I do speak a few languages, and one of the other words and terms I know is cojones. You need big cojones to start, in effect, spending money. Sometimes money that then you're personally responsible for, maybe the mortgage on your house, all sorts of things where, yeah, sure, it's still a dream, but you're now, taking big risks. Yeah. How does that happen? Has this always been who you are, or have you just been inspired by other people and thought, I'm going to go for it?
I think I was always, people that know me since many, many years know that I think, and as an entrepreneur, you have also to be a little bit crazy if you want to go different ways, if you don't want to be mainstream. I never did what the other did. So I always wanted to be somehow different. And of course, you need a certain level of craziness. And I think I have it. And then, but still, you need money. So you need also to take in account that you're responsible. And in my previous life before automotive, I was in the construction and machinery business for 20 years. And I have to say, I made a lot of money there. And then I sold my business to my other partners. And with this money, so with my own money, I was first funding Fisker Automotive in 2007. So Henrik Fisker and Barney Köhler met with me at the restaurant in Newport Beach. and they convinced me about their dream, about their design, the beautiful car, the Fisker Karma, the one that I'm still driving today. And so we did a company with my money, and it didn't go very well, as you know. But this was an experience, and it didn't strike so strong that I would not be able to stand up again. So, and because this is my passion, and I always wanted to do cars in my life, I had to do something different for 20 years. But then in the last 15 years, I'm doing cars and transforming, like the Fiat 500 I was importing to Europe from California. So I was always doing in the last 15 years something related to cars and, of course, electric. With this new journey, I convinced a couple of very good friends. I convinced also my wife, Sylvia.
That's the most important person.
Yeah, which she put her personal money also, because my personal money is basically non-existing anymore. So I had to take some of her money, and she believed in what I told her, and otherwise she wouldn't do it. And I also convinced all my other friends that, when they see that you're putting your skin in the game, they're more likely to invest themselves as well. And thank God these gentlemen are pretty much, in a safe comfort zone, so that they're not putting their lives at risk with investment they did. Nobody wants to, of course, lose the money. But if they would lose the money, it would not affect in a negative way their lives. That was for me paramount, that I don't have this burden, that in case it goes wrong, I have to explain them how they are making their next living, So it was a combination of all this. And of course, when you demonstrate that you're serious, you have capable person with you, like I said, the team with engineers and designers, very well-educated and talented people, by the way, which I would like to thank again, because there are a lot. I don't want to start naming them because it would be a long list on one side, and on the other side, I might forget someone, then I have a problem. So it is a long list of people that I have to say thank you, because most of these people worked all this time for free, basically, okay, for passion, because I told them from the beginning that my amount of money is limited, and there is a chance that, of course, I can employ them if we're getting to have more funding. And with this promise, we did it. We basically did a gentleman agreement among us, but nothing special really.
Well, I think,
and it's working.
Yeah, well, it's great to hear it's working. But I think a lot of people, I'm sure a few people maybe listening, don't realize that this happens quite a lot. Working for nothing. You're not as such working for nothing, because typically it's what they call sweat equity, or it's something whereby, if it is successful, you're going to get a reward. And yeah, you have to be in a certain financial position to do that. If you have to have income every single month to pay your bills, which is what most people on the planet have to have, then it's probably not for you. But if you find yourself in a certain situation where you can, again, take that risk, that key word for entrepreneurs, on something and somebody, it can work out very well. These stories that you hear of people with shares in a company that's now doing very, very well, it's very easy to look at them and be envious. But the truth is, right at the beginning, they were doing exactly as you described, work for nothing. They were taking big risks. It is extraordinary to think of, that little Croatian company that's not so little anymore. And Mate Rimac, starting off with 4 or 5 people in a garage, converting a BMW, having a belief and a vision for the future of electrification. And then over time, realizing that the things they wanted to do, there wasn't the supply chain to do it, to build that hypercar, and actually then, having to do things themselves against all the odds. And here we are, 13 years or something later, there's Rimac last night talking about their incredible partnership now with Bugatti. And, you know, who would have thought that? And many of those people at the beginning, who I think you know some of them, I certainly do, Monica Mikac and several others who were there right at the beginning, I bet you they were working either for nothing or not much.
I agree. I think that Mate had probably a similar beginning like myself right now, coming out from totally different experiences, because when Mate started, he was, like you said, 20 years old. And now I'm turning 60 July 8th in 2 days. So it's totally different. But, you know, life, you never know what's around the corner. You have to take it. You have to really, sometimes I say, like, you know, take the bull by the horns, you know.
Yeah.
And
well,
you can either say, okay, it's the bull is too strong, or you can say, I'm going to be stronger than the bull. And this is what I'm trying to do. I try to do stronger than the bull. That, you know, is how life is complicated. And you can imagine if you have a startup like us right now, and then you go and ask for a line of credit, they start asking you, what is your last balance sheet, and so on and so forth. So yeah, I'm going through this whole challenges like young Mate 13 years ago.
Yeah. Well, the thing there, listening to your explanation, is you've always got the opportunity, if you wanted to maybe be a bullfighter. You know, if that's what if that's what you say you can do. I know bullfighting isn't everyone's cup of tea anymore, to be honest. But there you are. Anyway, I think the thing that strikes me about you is, like you say, prepared to take risks, understand the value of teamwork. And, you know, when you have a dream, you're quite capable and quite confident to actually try and realize it. What lessons have you learned along the way? We're going to talk a lot more about what you're doing right now and what happens next. And maybe if there are people you like to sort of talk to in terms of, you know, what help you'd like and what things can happen next. Let's save that for later. But what I'm keen to understand from you as an individual, because as you say, you've surprised me. We're of a similar age. I know when I sat down and talked to Mate Rimac myself a few years ago, I was 60 and he was 30. And I felt quite insignificant. I thought, well, what have I done with my life? If he's managed this, he's 30 years old. Well, actually, on that point about life and time, I heard someone say this the other day, Gianfranco, and this will ring true with you because we're similar ages. A typical life is, say, 80 years, which is 960 months. So you and I have had 3/4 of that, you know, 60 to 80. And if then you equally think of that time as a single day, a 24-hour clock, then we've had 3/4 of the 24-hour clock. So for you and I, in terms of living an entire day, it's 6 o'clock in the evening. So I think, and I feel this, and I'm beginning to think you clearly do as well, we've got to get on with it. There isn't any time to waste now. The older you get, you realize your mortality. It is what it is. Same for everybody. And if we're lucky enough to live to 80, it's 6 o'clock in the evening. We've got to crack on, haven't we?
Yeah, there is no time to sleep and little time to dinner. That's for sure.
That's right. But just going back a bit then, in that the rest of the life you've had before this, you've mentioned Fisker a moment ago there. I don't want to touch too many raw nerves because, you know, it's good to be nice to people. But what lessons have you learned along the way about as much what to do as what not to do? I mean, if you're not comfortable being specific about things like Fisker, for example, don't be specific. But, you know, I think it's always nice to give people the benefit of your experience and your knowledge. So can you talk us through a little bit about that? What sort of things would you advise people not to do? Let's start like that then.
Yeah, especially when, you know, going to build an automobile is such a complex operation. And I came, as I told you, I came from a total different industry. So for 20 years, I did machinery. It was like being a little bit virgin when you then swiftly pass from one industry to another industry, and you think you could use the experience of the 20 years before for the new venture, and then you discover along the road that it's totally different. The amount of money that you need to build a car is nothing compared with the equipment I was doing. So when you're getting into this field, you're becoming, suddenly the center of some attentions. And back then in 2007, as you might remember, we were just two companies working in this field, one being Tesla and one being us. And there was a certain appetite for venture capital towards this new trend. So we have attracted some of these big venture capital. And I suddenly realized that I was like a little fish among sharks, and because the industry I was in before, being a little fish was pretty common for everyone. We had a few big companies, of course, but most of the companies were fairly small size companies. So now we are in the automotive industry, and I find myself talking to billionaires. I was back then I was 45 years old, and so not that young anymore, but I had less experience in this high volume industry. And of course, high volume means also high money. The numbers that we were turning back then, if you think that we were able to raise $1 billion in 2007, 2008, 2009, plus we also had $500 million from the Department of Energy, which we didn't use in completely because we didn't meet certain milestones. So we could only use 200 of these 500. But still, there was a big amount of money involved. And this is changing people, If I think when I was managing my team with the equipment manufacturing, we were talking about, a turnover of 40, 50 million euros per year. And then suddenly you're here in a company that is getting $1 billion, Yeah. So the people are less, let's say, honest. Okay. So they put up a certain mask where you think you have to do with people you can trust. And then at the first occasion they have, they take advantage. In some, and sometimes also people, somehow stealing money, overpricing, or, doing funny stuff regarding, how to handle the money, and spending easily for nonsense. Okay. And I was always used to be very careful. I give you a stupid example, but when I was in the other industry, I had to go to a trade show, and we had a big trade show in Hanover, Germany. And then we had another one in Bologna in Italy. And then every 3 or 4 years, I think it was in Las Vegas, the Con Expo was called. Mm-hmm. So we were going to all these shows to present our machinery, and we were on a budget hotel, always trying to be under 100 euros, $100, something like that. Really looking to every single cent we had to spend. And then I'm here at Fisker Automotive, and the people comes with contracts where I say, what? This guy, I was one of the founder, the first investor, and then I see something like the guy is coming with a private chauffeur with a Mercedes S-Class. And I say, why? Well, this is industry standard. This is what I heard all the time. This is industry standard. If you don't do that, people will not come to you, and blah, 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 blah. I was hearing that all these years. And I remember very well one day, I was managing Europe. So I was setting up the dealer network in Europe. And one of my guys said, oh, there is this lady coming from America that is going to do a photo shooting in Mantova in Italy, because Mantova is a little small town with an incredible nice scenery in the middle of the town, which is medieval. And I don't remember the reason why they wanted Mantova to do the photo shoot. Anyways, to find in Italy a chauffeur with an S-Class Mercedes is something very difficult, extremely difficult. So I managed to find someone in Verona because this particular lady was flying in from the US and then I guess some bigger airport and then coming down to Verona. And she wanted to be picked up. So I sent this gentleman with a Mercedes, but it was only an E-Class. Okay, it was not an S-Class. So it was a chauffeur driving to Verona airport, picking up this lady, bringing her to Mantova. And then my guy calls me and said, you know, this lady here, she's complaining it's not an S-Class. It's only an E-Class, you know. And this was happening at Fisker Automotive all the time, Roger, all the time. Yeah. And I said, when I was in meetings, I said, you know, what are you doing here? This is not our money. This is the investors' money. We should be careful. And then I was always treated like, you know, the dumb European, old-fashioned guy. And no, this is the American way. This is the standard here, et cetera, et cetera. So it's the mindset that really matters. It's the mindset. You have to be humble and don't trust people that throw out money easily. Get rid of these people.
Gianfranco, I think this is a really, really important message, you know, to swim in shark-infested waters, which is what you've just been talking about. But yeah, the mindset part of it, it's almost like, well, I know this was the case at Rimac to begin with. It hopefully is similar, but it won't be the same. And I know this was the case at the startup I joined, Modec. We didn't really have any money. So we had to use our imagination more to spend things. You know, I can remember, you know, looking at one time how much it cost to go to London, whether it's cheaper to go on a coach or the train. The timing didn't matter. It was how much it cost. And, you know, you should very much focus on those little things, because the extravagance of all of that soon flies away. I mean, I could tell you a few companies I'm very familiar with that have done a similar thing, and they don't succeed. Those companies ultimately do not succeed.
All these companies don't succeed. That's the thing.
Yeah, it is, and because it isn't just being careful with money or not being, you know, Mr. Smarty Pants show off and all that. That attitude applies into many things that you do, and often in life, you know, less is more. And the more time you've got, the less you get done. The less time you've got, the more you get done. The less money you've got, the more careful you are with it. You know, if you
fully agree with that.
You know,
I always say that, you know, less is more. I fully agree with that.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it may not apply to absolutely everything, but to many things in life, I think it does. And as you say, that's a very key word. And thank you for that story and that lesson. Mindset. Have a mindset that's about, this is someone else's money, not yours. You know, you've been given it actually for a particular job. The job is, in that case, you know, and in your case now, to produce, deliver, and sustain and build a business around an electric car. So let's talk about electric cars, because, you know, that would be a good thing. The story of electric cars is fascinating, isn't it? You know, let's not go back over history. Lots of people listening or watching this will know that. But for sure, a fundamental around it all is, of course, the battery. Now, I think I'm right in saying that at the time, the Fisker story was very much hooked up with A123, A123 battery systems. Yeah. I went to that battery factory in Livonia, in Detroit. It was something to see. I mean, it was an extraordinary facility. I guess you went there once or twice, didn't you?
Yeah, that was also a company that had a parallel story with us. They also received funding from the Department of Energy, and they were a spin-off. Some of the founders were working at the MIT, and then they did the spin-off and get the money. That was again the battery involved, like in this venture here. Also, we talk about batteries later, maybe. But
definitely.
The thing is that 2007, 2008, it was so dramatic, and it was already the third company that we changed from the initial two we had.
Well, who did you have before that?
Yeah,
Can you remember?
one was ALP in Canada that went bankrupt, and the other one was another company which was run. It was an American company, but it was run by a Russian guy, and this company I don't remember very well. But they didn't withstand our tests. When we were testing the cells, it wasn't by far the level of of energy density we needed back then. So the last company left was basically A123, and actually we also had LG. A few of the batteries of the Fisker Karma batteries are either the A123 and the LG. You might be very lucky if you have the LG one, because the LG one was working and it had no troubles. The A123 had a serious problem, which we didn't know at the beginning. It was the way it was manufactured, that it was slightly leaking a little bit of electrolyte, and it was after months.
It's bad, isn't it?
It is very
leaking
bad.
is
very, it was really a small little drop that was coming down from the pouch cell. And then, of course, if the liquid electrolyte is meeting and conducting electricity on a metal, then you know what happens, right?
Yep.
So some of these batteries were catching on fire, and eventually also complete cars were, taking fire.
Thermal runaway, I think.
The thermal runaway, correct. And so that was very bad publicity. And of course, you remember the story. Oh, electric cars are dangerous. Electric cars are burning and all that. We were just at the kindergarten footsteps of the electrification, of the new electrification of our mobility back then. And everybody, or the strong lobby from oil and gas and so on and hydrogen, they were happy about reporting some of these stories. So we had to do a recall, and we didn't know exactly in how many of the cars this leakage would eventually occur. So we started to already send about 400 Fisker Karmas around the world to our dealers. So these were mainly at the beginning the so-called dealer demonstrators. So each dealer had to take at least 2 cars eventually for the showroom and for the test drives. So we had this 400 cars shipped to about 100 different locations. And then you have to pay warranty and substitute all these batteries to all these locations, to all these dealers. And you had to, do special shipping, because, lithium ion battery in this kind of dimension, you have to certify that it was less than, I think, 20% of the charge, of the state of charge. Otherwise you cannot ship it. So it was an immense logistical nightmare we had to do, with cost that A123 finally couldn't pay us, because that was their fault. So they went bankrupt first. They couldn't pay us, and we had to pay all the warranties by our own. And this was giving us, of course, a big problem with the investors. The investors were already planning to do an IPO, to make a lot of money out of their investment. And then you have suddenly a big problem like this. So we were basically stranded. And then, as usual, when something goes wrong, more goes wrong. And then we had Hurricane Sandy striking in New York, where we had 400 Karmas parked in the parking lot at Newark, at the port of Newark. There are pictures, if you look up, if you Google Fisker Karma, Newark, Hurricane Sandy, something like this, you see all these pictures of burned Karma popping up. So it was a disaster. It was the bad time and the most difficult time in my life, I tell you honestly.
Now, much of this is familiar with me because, as you know, my journey began a similar sort of time back, 2007. So those cells. So again, for people listening and maybe don't know all the intricacies, someone has to make the cell. That's quite an intricate and very, highly delicate job to achieve and to get it right. And clearly, if it's not right, we've just heard what the consequences can be. And then most places will just take the cells and then they will assemble them into modules and put them into a full battery pack. So were you at Fisker building the battery packs, or were you getting the whole battery pack from someone else?
No, we not ALP. I'm sorry, A123 were delivering the whole pack.
The battery pack. Okay.
Yeah, the battery pack. Yeah.
They
were responsible for the whole thing.
Yeah,
we were not able to do the packing by our own. We had initially we had Quantum Technologies involved, and they were. You remember that Quantum Technologies? Yeah. So they were linked with this company in. I think they were in Vancouver, British Columbia, in Canada. The first company, ALP, the first battery company, the one that didn't make it either.
Yeah.
These were really early days and very tough moments in discovering how the experience was totally missing. We had no real supply chain. Who is going to deliver the motor, inverters, and all that stuff? It was terrible difficult. I mean, for today's standards, they were like prehistorical components that we were using. If I think in my Karma, the how big the inverter are, it's half of the trunk. I don't know if you have ever looked in the trunk of a Karma. If you open up,
is it really that big?
Yeah, it's half the size because it's on top of the two rear motors. The Karma has two rear motors on the rear axle, and the inverter have to stay close to the motors. So basically, the trunk is holding the two inverters, and I have like maybe a golf bag that I can put on my on the rear of the car. So it's very, very compact, very small. Wow. You have to. When you have a chance to see a Fisker Karma, remember these words and look in the trunk, and you understand that there are two big inverters sitting on top of the electric motors.
Well, I will do. And what you're reminding me is how far we've come in a relatively short period of time.
14, 15 years.
We combined motor inverter on the Modec, which was a lovely piece of kit, actually. It sounds like it was smaller than the one you had on yours, and this was for a 5.5 ton gross vehicle weight delivery truck.
Yeah, but we had 300 kilowatt of electric power.
Right, and this was a Zytec unit we had as part of Continental now, but the engineers in that were great. But again, relating this to the other people along the journey we've all shared, then this is why Rimac became really good at low volume, high value componentry and electrification early on, because there wasn't a supply chain. So they worked out how to make it themselves. Which I think put them in a very strong position, actually fairly quickly. But yeah, this is fascinating to just compare our timelines and
because you've been in the middle as well, like me, and there are not so many that can tell these stories, because now everyone knows, the electric car is the future and it's actually the present. But back then we were just a few.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, funny enough, we were using LiFePO 4 batteries, LFP batteries. And I was only, of course, just starting to understand a bit about it. We had Zebra batteries before that, which is sodium nickel chloride.
Very tricky batteries. They were in the what was it called? The small city car made in Finland together.
Yes, the Think. That's right.
The Think had the same battery, and and to put them into a proper same level of the cells, etc., to balance them, because they had no BMS, etc. That was a nightmare. I remember a few of my friends bought the car. They had problems all the time, Roger.
Well, again, this is where I think people who are still very much in the internal combustion engine arena, of course, they haven't seen this journey as such. They've not been particularly interested, many of them. And yes, we still have some challenges, but there are so many people now with so much money, not always in the right place, but looking at progressing all of these challenges to a point of, finesse and better conclusion. So can we talk a little bit then about, what you're doing with the company? Because I'm keen to get to the heart of something which you hear a lot, but I'm not sure if people believe, which is that high value, low volume exotica, hypercars, supercars, call them what you will, are responsible for generating technology that then trickles down into other things. Can you reassure me and other people that really happens, or is that just a bit of smokescreen excuse for people to, make these vehicles of indulgence that only the wealthy can afford? Is it really helping progress electrification? Be honest with me now, Gianfranco.
Yeah, I think so. I think I have probably a similar approach like Mate, even though he's not so much into the battery itself, because he's buying the cells and packaging then the battery. And I'm not going to, do like Mate was doing, my own inverters and so on and so forth, because time has changed. And now you can have pretty much everything. I don't want to name now, don't want to do publicity to companies, but there are a bunch of English top companies that are very strong in the electrification, as you know. There are Americans. I try to go away from Chinese company, to be honest, because you never know who you are dealing with. I prefer Western. I don't adapt very well with Chinese mentality. I'm probably too old for that. So I have a good contact of people that can provide with something I don't have, and I think this is what has changed to the best. And then what really I want to be the differentiator is this hybrid battery we are designing. And this is my wife calling, so I just say I call you later. And
She's not asking for her money back, is she?
Probably she is, but she has more than me. So eventually she's asking what I'm doing with her money. Exactly. So, the hybrid battery that we are right now engineering has two very important components, which is one, the ultra caps, and the other one, the solid state cells. And I was lucky enough with my network, and because I'm 15 years in the business, I know a bunch of people, like you know a bunch of people. And one of my best friends is Mark Lander from Imecar, really a friend and a partner that I really appreciate. He always helped me when I was looking for something. I call him and I say, I need this, who would you take? And his answer is always the right one. So fall last year, when I called Mark, and Mark was involved from the first minute to the Hypercar project as well. And I asked him about because he's working with CATL very much with the standard cells. And then he says, well, do you want to try a solid state cell? And I said, a solid state? Who has a solid state cell?
Yeah, exactly.
I said, I have a friend in Belgium, Professor Noshim Omar. He's working on that, and he already has 15 years of experience on an academic and university level. Now, recently, he did a spin-off, and he's making his own cells with his battery at the Solvay campus in Brussels. Have a chat with him. And so he set up another Zoom call, one of the many, many, many in these last 15, 16 months. And then I met Noshin. And it was, he was very clear, explaining the state, you know, the TRL, the technological readiness level.
Yep.
He said, I'm at TRL 5, and, you know, it will take another 1.5 years until I can give you some pouch cells to test, and then eventually prismatic. So we did something that started not so, you know, in a way that I wanted to have 100% this kind of chemical combination between solid state and the ultracaps, because eventually I could have the cells that Mark is providing. But then he said, listen, I think we are in time that for the time you have your prototype ready, the battery can be ready as well. So this will be, let's say, spring next year, spring 2022. And I said, okay, why should I then invest time with a normal standard battery if you can provide me with a few cells? And, you know, he has a pilot line right now. He has a pilot line, so there is no gigafactory. So the pilot line means that he can produce cells on a megawatt hour level. So maybe I can do 10, 15, maybe 20 battery pack in total. But you can imagine how expensive this is. And I tell you, right now, we have estimated our cost to be for just one battery to be 300,000 euros. So,
and what kilowatt pack?
100 kilowatt hours.
Okay.
So it's 3,000 euros per kilowatt hour. So our battery is costing us 300,000 euros. So there is no way you can do a cheap car. You need to do a hypercar.
Yeah.
So we said together, if we succeed and we can demonstrate that the solid state battery exists and works, and the combination with the ultracaps and this hybrid battery pack is going to be the future for high performance car, but not only, because then it could be applied to many other industries. Then I think we can attract investors, and then we can scale it up to a gigawatt hour standard. And this is what Noshin and I are now doing. We try to promote the Fulminia in such a way that we are becoming investors that ultimately want to help us to produce and make the gigafactory and scale it up. We have a size in mind, which is ideal to bring cost down, which is 2.5 gigawatt hour capacity. And the investment, the total investment is roughly €500 million to get to production, which is not exaggerated if you think that many other companies that you know are spending billions.
Oh, listen, if you're going to build a gigafactory with anything from, you know, I don't know, 20 gigawatts upwards, you know, typically anything between 20 and 40 gigawatts. Yeah, of course, it's 1, 2, 3, 4 billion, you know, take your pick, depends where it is, depends on a number of things. But listen, this is really important to my mind, the journey you've just taken us around, you know, in the proximity of Solvay in Belgium. Anyone doesn't know, chemical company, one of the biggest chemical companies in the world. Batteries are predicated hugely, of course they are, on chemicals. And the journey towards solid state ambition is a fundamental now in the electric vehicle journey. You know, and you only need to talk about companies that are very well known in that aspect, like QuantumScape and Solid Power, to realize how excited people can get at the prospect of solid state batteries. And they have, of course, it's a very twisted, you know, a very, not twisted, that's the wrong phrase. It's a very challenging journey. And you said something a moment ago there, Gianfranco, which I think exercises the minds of OEMs, and I think a lot of customers, which is, if we're going to get a better battery within 5 or 10 years, why not wait? Why pile in on everything right now if just around the corner, not literally, but 5 to 10 years hence, let's give it that timeline, we have solid state batteries, which will be cheaper, have better energy density, and a better capability to work in all conditions, particularly when it gets cold in the winter. And as anybody knows who's got an EV, typically, of course, your range will diminish, sometimes depending upon how well the battery's, insulated, sometimes quite a lot. So you've definitely reminded me about that solid state aspect to your story. When I first saw that, I'll be honest with you, I thought, not sure. Everybody's saying this stuff. Really, nothing personal in that, please, because I do know you're a highly credible individual. But when you've had people like James Dyson, getting involved with electric vehicles, particularly because of the prospect of solid state batteries. And if I remember rightly, I can't remember all of this stuff, but I think this was SACTI 3. So SACTI 3, which is a spin out of MIT, suggested that they had solid state more than just around the corner. They had it kind of just over there. And as a consequence, then Dyson bought the company for, I think, 90 or 100 million, a lot of money. Well, relatively a lot of money, but not in what the prize could be. But then over time found that it wasn't as mature as it looked, and it wasn't going to fulfill the ambition that he had for the Dyson electric vehicle. And then, of course, that program got completely pulled. So I'm familiar with all the twists and turns in and around this, as many people are listening to the podcast, I'm sure. And so we're really interested in now, is this going to happen? So the spring of 2022, you're telling me you're going to have, and put to one side the cost for a moment, you are going to have working solid state batteries that are going to work in conjunction with
a hypercar.
Yeah, this is extraordinary.
Yeah.
And it's going to be what did you say, 90 or 100 kilowatt battery pack?
100 kilo in total. Net will be 100 kilowatt hour battery pack, and because of the high density, this cell. I was
going to say, what range?
500. I mean, WLTP 520 kilometers, but it depends. You have 2,000 horsepower. You go on a track after half an hour, it's finished. But what is really important for me is that we bring the weight down, because I don't think that despite all the electronics you have, torque control, etc., I think that what still is important in the car is the total weight of the car. So the less weight you have, the better you can enjoy, especially a hypercar. So our target, our engineers, they know the target is 1,500 kilos. So it should not be more than that. And this is only possible if you use solid state, because it's half the weight, because it's double the energy density. And therefore, with double the energy density, of course, if it's a 600 kilo battery, then you got the 300 kilo battery. Maybe we have a little bit more because we have the ultra caps as well that we have to combine. But our target is definitely to cut the weight in half. And the only way we can finance the whole thing is by having customers paying a lot of money for the car. And, when you are in the 2 million euros range, there are several companies, including Rimac and Pininfarina, and then also Pagani, Bugatti, and so on and so forth. But what gave me really very recently the strength to think that I'm on the right track is that McKinsey, I was during the last 4 days at the Motor Valley Fest here in Modena, where everywhere in the old town of Modena, we had the display of the most beautiful cars in the world, of the Ferraris, the Paganis, the Lamborghini, Ducatis were there. Energica, my friend Livia Cevolini of Energica was there with a wonderful...
She's amazing. She's
an amazing lady. And also the husband and also the brother Franco. So we had this 4 days of Motor Valley Fest where we had a lot of meetings and a lot of information that we exchanged between manufacturers. And there was a gentleman from McKinsey that presented, and I will share this presentation with you, Roger. I will send it to you by email. So McKinsey was showing how, because that was a presentation focused on the Motor Valley, on the future, how the Motor Valley should work in the next 10 years. And you heard that now everyone wants to do the electrification of their models, the Ferraris, the Lamborghini, and the Maseratis. So the gentleman said that basically the high wealth individuals are going to be 90,000 more in 2025, totaling 330,000 individuals worldwide. So people that have more than $30 million in their bank account. So these individuals are all potential buyers of hypercars. And by 2025, it's always in the study that you can see, there will be more hypercars that will be electric rather than with internal combustion engine. And the number, which is roughly 900 per year right now, will be probably very close to 2,000 in 2025. That means that by 2025, we will have the hypercar market being doubled to what it is today. And this means that there is room also for us. So there is a chance for us to have a future and survive. And the demonstrator is definitely our hybrid battery pack with the solid state cells. So this has to function. If this is, of course, now going to be the way we want, then we need a backup plan. But I'm confident. I'm talking every day, or maybe every second day, with Professor Noshin Omar, asking this and that. He has recently produced the first pouch cells. They're not yet at the energy level we want, but at the end of the year they will reach it, and then they will start. They are actually moving from the Solvay campus to another location, because the Solvay campus where they are in right now is kind of cramped, and they don't have the place for the new pilot line that they are. They already have it, but they cannot mount it because the surface is not big enough. So they're going to move in another location, not far away, and then with the pilot line, we will have the cells that we can use with our Fulminia. And I'm counting the days where I finally see the thing, because as you can imagine, I'm pretty nervous.
Well, yeah, you should be, and that's good, and that's all part of the excitement of being on a spectacular journey. I think you've got this beautiful design. It's quintessentially Italian. It just looks gorgeous. I'm not one of those people.
I'm coming to Salon Privé, by the way, in September, Roger. So it would be cool. Would be cool if you can come along and have a look in person.
I thank you. I would love that, but unfortunately, I'm not in that McKinsey report. I'm not one of those people.
Who cares? Never stop dreaming.
Well, no, but the thing about it is,
and maybe
some people who are in that group. Actually,
maybe we can have a weekend together with you and I. You come down to. We are not far away from Lake Garda, and when we have one of those prototypes running, then who knows? We do a tour.
Yeah, well, listen, having a tour in a nice car in Italy is something anyone is always, or should always, say yes to. There are a few more things I'd like to talk about. I know we've been going a bit already, but your story and what you're doing, and a lot of these, I think the revelations are fantastically interesting. Of course they are. But let me ask you, you've been in Modena recently then, so there you are, home of Ferrari, and other things. But what's your sense of Formula One? Where does Formula One go now in regard to this accelerated adoption of electric vehicles, this dispatch of the internal combustion engine into the past? Seemingly that's what seems to be going to happen. Where does that leave Formula One in your view?
I think there will be in the next 4 to 5 years something that there is just one formula I don't think that there is a need of keeping Formula E and Formula One separated. It will be just the Formula One, whatever you want to call it. There is no, I tell you, and many people may disagree, but the way I see it is that in 4 to 5 years, nobody cares about combustion engine. Yeah, there will be aficionados that, of course, the 12-cylinder, beautiful, sculptured 12-cylinder Ferraris or Lamborghini will still exist as, you know, when people gather together to talk about the past times. But we are totally launched towards electrification. If you talk to very young people right now and you ask what is the coolest car brand, and they will tell you Tesla.
Oh yeah,
they are not saying Ferrari. So ask a teenager in California or a teenager in, of course, not ask a teenager in Modena. A teenager in Modena will tell you Ferrari, but in general, they will say it's Tesla. The coolest car is a Tesla.
Yeah,
it's accelerating and so on and so forth. And I think that in 4 to 5 years, the Formula races will be totally electric. The combustion engine will have no reason to still be inside the car.
I'm not so sure. I slightly asked this question.
You think they keep a 6-cylinder and do a plug-in hybrid?
No, I'm just thinking of a few things on the horizon that are credible. So, for example, synthetic fuel, having the ability to create petroleum without oil, without hydrocarbon from oil-based, you know, extraction. There's a very famous motor engineer and called Paddy Lowe. I've had Paddy Lowe on this podcast actually talking about synthetic fuel, and I've made a film which I'm finalizing this week, hopefully to go out next week, called Motorsport in the Electric Age, where I went and spoke to people like Mark Preston from the Formula E team and his backgrounds in Formula One. Yeah. I went because I live in Brackley. It's a bit like living near Medina. I can go into Brackley.
Yeah, the UK Motor Valley, yes.
Yeah, well, exactly. We've got this lovely motorsport valley, as you say, and then up to Brixworth to HPP to talk to these people. These are some of the world's best engineers. You know, where is this going? Let's have a conversation. So hopefully you can hear that. You can be your own sort of opinion judge, whatever, of what comes out of that. But certainly the overall theme is Formula One isn't finished. Formula One will evolve. It must still be relevant, but it has to be, and it will be reinvented. In effect, they are some of the greatest engineers in the world who have the ability to solve many of the other problems that we've got in and around the world, outside of motorsport and automotive. So we shouldn't necessarily just, chuck it all away. But there's another story. Final thing I'd like to just talk with you in terms of summing things up. So you mentioned in 4 or 5 years, you think, no one is going to be interested in combustion engine. How is this managed? How are we going to get a managed transition from the thing that's been going for over 100 years, with many of these big companies employing tens of thousands of people, whether it's in France, Italy, Germany, the UK, America? How do you think that is going to work out? Is there a plan, Gianfranco? Do you believe that something is going to come along unexpected? We know we've just had an event like that called COVID-19, but do you think possibly driverless cars might change everything? Do you think that solid state might change everything? Give us, please, your sense of, so here we are, 2021. Let's say by 2026, so five years, your timeline, how's that all going to come together?
I think that there will be a lot of new services that we will need. For instance, more and more people that can offer the service of charging the car for you, or bringing the battery where you don't have a plug. I think these kind of services will be pretty common. The more we increase the number of electric cars on the road, and not everyone has a plug at home. And therefore, this, for instance, is a service. And then also this, we have a couple of examples of the new charging stations. There are, I saw one on fully charged a couple of months ago in the UK.
Yeah, I know the one. Yeah,
yeah, you know what I'm talking.
Braintree. Yeah,
exactly. Beautiful, beautiful. So you're there, you charge your car, and you do all the other stuff that you usually do anyways, right? With the difference that your car is being charged there. So the whole economy around the charging of the car is going to influence the next decision in terms of investing, where to invest.
I think
do I have
right?
So I think there is so much coming up, and I see it every day again when I start traveling as usual. They open up one in Rome. NLX open up a similar, a little bit smaller in Rome. I was surprised. Wow, in Italy, where until a couple of years ago, everyone said, "Oh, the electric car will never come," and now, even in Italy, people say, "Hey, wait a minute. Actually, it's not that bad. Actually, I see more and more charging station coming up, and also the fast charging station coming up. NLX and the such of Ionity are investing a lot in Italy as well. So everything what I have seen in the last 2 years, and I guess that COVID-19 also helped a little bit, because we had in Italy the Po flat, which is the only flat we have in Italy, that was always among the dirtiest polluted airs in Europe. And then they saw that suddenly, because nobody is moving, because of the restrictions, all the air increased, the quality of the air increased so much. So it has to be something to do with the pollution of the exhaust coming from the car. So everything is now moving. I see there was the other day, a company came visiting me saying, "Hey, I'm making like a kind of spray that goes in the climate control, where it's taking all the viruses away." He invented this in the COVID time. He was at home with no job, and he was thinking, "What can I do?" So let me think, if we have this problem with the virus and we have it inside a car, we sit in the car for a long time, we need to clean the air. And so he had this little spray that somehow you can mount in an existing car, which is cleaning the air. And he said, "Wouldn't that be cool if your Fulminia will be virus-free, whatever, So I see a lot of new opportunities coming up. Of course, the one that will not move will never move, but the one interested, they will change, and they will improve, and they will find other ways, to make jobs available to everyone. I'm not saying that we are going along without having troubles. We will have troubles every time with the changes in our lives. And there was a revolutionary time. Think about the Industrial Revolution in UK, when the first machinery to make something that was done by hand before, and then suddenly it changed. It caused some troubles, of course.
Yes, disruption.
Someone said, "You're not going to stop the wind just because you're putting a wall. The wind will blow through." So it will blow through, and I believe solid state can be one of the components, and we are going to need terawatt hours of capacity, because we're not talking just about mobility, but there is also
renewable energy.
Yeah, and exactly, we need it in every aspect. So I'm very positive. I was positive all my life, and I'm confident that mankind can find a solution if we work properly and honestly all together.
Well, I hope so, and that's a lovely positive note to finish on. That's like the flight director of Apollo 13, isn't it? They get the guys together and they say, you know, failure is not an option. We're going to get these 3 guys home. It looks impossible, but that's what we're going to do. So I listen, I think you finished that off really nicely. I think at both ends of the electric vehicle proposition, the battery side, innovation in that, and certainly the innovation in prospect you've described with solid state is very exciting. And then I think charging infrastructure, you know, charging doesn't need to be a headache. It shouldn't be I need to make a big plan to fill up my car with fuel. It should be the same as today, if not easier. Easier in many ways it already is, as we know. Anybody who's got an EV and can charge at home, you fill up overnight and you get in your car in the morning and it's full. You don't have to go anywhere. It's great. But for the times when you do, it's not always so great. So there you are. But listen, thank you for sharing that. I'm sure we could have talked for another half an hour or anything.
Roger, it's every time we meet is we have many years of experience combined together. I better don't say the number, because then it shows our age.
Yeah, you haven't even asked me about what I think of the I-Pace, which I've been driving now for 9 months. So in Geneva, we were talking about.
Yeah, you told me that you were pretty happy. But I guess that maybe sometimes you would like to have it charging a bit faster, right?
Yeah, I definitely would. And the software is a little bit. But mechanically, engineering-wise, and as a driver's car, it's an
incredible car.
Yeah,
I had it for 2 years. I had the luck to be the luck and the honor to be the Italian brand ambassador for the Jaguar I-Pace.
Yes, you were a very good ambassador. Final thought. So, as I understand it, there is going to be a Geneva show next year. I believe it's going to be in February, not in March. It normally would be in March. Is that a bit early for you? Do you think that you'll?
Yeah, it's a bit early, because we would be focusing on the prototype and installing the battery and the powertrain. That's exactly it. It's going to be in the same period. So I might be there as a visitor, but definitely not as an exhibitor, not next year.
Okay.
You know, you have only so much time, and you said it's 6 p.m. for us.
Yeah, exactly. It'll be about 6:15 then, won't it?
It's already 6:15, so you know, time is running, and I have to rush and have the car ready.
Yeah. Well, listen, I'm really looking forward to sharing this with everybody. Maybe I rambled on a bit at the beginning, but you most certainly haven't. You've given us a lovely perspective of what you've been up to, what you're doing, and where you are now with the car, and especially the energy side of things, the power side of things, and the battery, you know, specifically. So, you know, Gianfranco, thank you so much for your time. That's been very generous of you today.
It's always a pleasure talking.
Yeah, well, it is absolutely for me. All I do is talk about stuff, find people who are doing things, and get them to talk about stuff. I'm not building anything, so you know, the only bit I do is a LinkedIn.
You have a job which is important, because you're advocating since so many years. And I told you when I met you first in Geneva that I was following you since many years. So you know, because the good thing is when I'm going to see your posts on LinkedIn or even, you know, the wonderful podcasts, you always learn something. You know,
good.
You always learn something.
That's my ambition.
And someone told me which was former CEO of BMW North America, Victor Duran. Vic used to tell me, Franco, there is no finish line. Okay, so there is no finish line.
That's true, but there is right now, because this is the end of the podcast. But yeah, so thank you and goodbye. And we'll bump into each other soon. I'm quite sure. Literally bump into each other. I'm looking forward to it. Gianfranco, thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Thanks for listening to the show, and make sure you follow Roger on LinkedIn, where you'll discover almost all there is to know about the spectacular electric vehicle revolution.